My adoptive parents are demanding I give up my wedding venue so my stepsister can have it instead. But that doesn't end there. You will not believe how they treat me as I tell them no. I'm 22 and female. I'm engaged to an amazing man, Jamie, who's also 22, and we're set to get married in the summer at a beautiful country estate. It really is everything I could have dreamt of. A lovely house surrounded by gardens. There's a lake which was weeping willows around it. It's along its bank which trail their branches into the water, and I'm looking forward to kissing my new husband underneath their shadow. I sometimes fall asleep envisioning it. I know it's a bit sickly for everyone else, but to me it's going to be the perfect end to our wedding. Jamie and I are both huge lovers of nature, and for us as having a wedding surrounded by nature's beauty is the best we could ever hope for. We're getting married in the gardens as I did not want to be inside when there was all this beauty to see outside. Jamie and I met through work, and we've been together for 2 years now. We work for an environmental agency, and he fell for me when I was covered in mud and sliding around in a river. So I knew that a man who could love me covered in sludge and pond weak was something who would always be by my side. I have an interesting one, I suppose. I work as a description, relationship with my family. Before I get into details of the main problem that I want to share, I should give you a background so you can form a picture of my story. I know it'll be at my viewpoint, but obviously that's all I can give you with some added opinions that Jamie also has said over the last 2 years. This may be a long introduction, but it's really a big bucket of worms that's now been opened. I was adopted as a baby. I was only 4 weeks old when my parents took me. I've never met my biological mother, and I have no interest in doing so. Or, at least, I've never really thought about it. All I know is that she was incredibly young and had issues with her own family. I was given up for adoption immediately after my birth. My adoptive parents have been trying for a child with no luck, and have been told that they will not be able to have bio children. I found out later that the adoption was at my dad's idea, and my mom went along with it as he wanted a family and she was worried he would leave her if she could not have a baby. That's stupid, as my dad is the most gentle, loving man who ever lived. He's a big guy and he has a huge beard, which can make him look intimidating, I suppose, but he's a big old teddy bear. A big old teddy bear who loves. He's a park ranger. And it's where my love of nature actually comes from. I've spent hours out with him in the mountains and woods, and over the years we've nursed a few fair creatures back to health. He taught me a healthy respect for predators, which will come in later for the story. We're not a rich family, but we're not poor either. My dad's family are careful with money, and we do live well. I often wonder who my mom and dad got together, as she hates living in the mountains and spends a lot of time away in the city. Anyways, I digress. A year after I was adopted, my mom fell pregnant with my sister Holly. We are, therefore, remarkably close in age. My mom immediately transferred all her love and attention to Holly. I now know that when she fell pregnant, she'd ask my dad if they could, quote, just give the other one back. My dad responded absolutely not, and put it down the pregnancy hormones. But my relationship with my mom and sister has always been strained. I guess I didn't really notice it until I was a bit older, as I was just a young child. I was oblivious to the fact that I was different. My dad has gone out of his way to make sure I'm always loved and cherished, and I'll be forever grateful for that. I found out I was adopted when I turned 7 years old. My dad said they'd always planned to tell me, but he wanted to tell me when I was older and able to process the information clearly. I'm sure he never expected me to find out because my mom was mad that I've not listened to her and snapped at me and saying this, I guess you get this behavior from your real mother. She's obviously a troublemaker getting pregnant at 15. I didn't know what she meant, so I went and asked my dad, who, although was furious with my mom, took time to first explain what adoption meant. Unlike my mom, he was kind about my biological mother and told me that she was just very young, and by putting me up for adoption, she had made a choice to ensure that I would have the best life possible. In his explanation, my biological mom was brave and selfless by making that decision. Not the stupid little girl of mom's explanation. Well, once I knew, my mom seemed to change as though there was no point even pretending that I was her real daughter, and that included how she acted in front of Holly, who, as she grew older, picked up on it and refused to call me her sister. She would tell the other kids at school that she was only child, and when they said, isn't she your sister? She would reply, she's adopted, she doesn't count. It hurt, but I grew so used to it that after a while I barely thought about it. I was protected from so much by my father and grandpa that I did not even think I was affected as much as I could have been if I did not have them. Anyways, fast forward to current events. The past will probably creep in and out of the story, as no matter how much you try to run from your past, it has a nasty way of creeping up on you. Jamie proposed to me just after Christmas. He wanted to get married as soon as possible. Luckily, we already had an idea where we wanted the venue, and we were able to get it done by summer. I knew that planning the wedding of my dreams in a short time would be a lot of work, but Jamie was ready to help, and I was confident that we could do it. It was just after New Year's following the proposal that the first signs of trouble appeared. I was talking to my grandpa about my plans, and he handed me a check that would cover the cost of the venue and all the vendors. I was speechless and said that he didn't have to pay for everything, as Jamie and I had the funds put aside. He smiled and said, "It's not all for me. Your dad has added to it but wanted to keep it between us. Your mom has funny ideas, so let's not rattle her cage." Well, honestly, I was hurt that they even felt this was needed, and part of me thought they were actually in the wrong. But it turned out that they were being prudent. My mom and sisters said all the right words when I announced that Jamie and I were engaged, but I felt that the words from their mouth did not exactly match the look on their faces. I saw Holly exchange looks with my mother a few times that night, but I was too caught up in my happiness to even care. I should have known trouble was brewing when less than a week after Jamie asked to be his wife. Holly arrived the next family dinner wearing an engagement ring with all that could probably be seen from space. It was huge. Well, she waved it around, and there was definitely a lot more excitement on my mom's part at Holly's announcement than mine. My dad, however, looked disappointed and sad. As this was an introduction to the drama, I should probably introduce Holly's fiancé, Ben. Ben's older than she is. He's 28 years of age, while Holly's just 21. She met him in a bar while out with friends celebrating her 21st birthday. I wasn't invited, by the way, and they've been together a whole 6 months. To say that they were a new relationship would be an understatement, as they barely knew each other. Holly said that he was the love of her life, and when you know, you know. Remember when I said my dad taught me to recognize a predator? Well, Ben, I saw one from the first time I've met him. I tried to express my worries to Holly, but she told me to back off and stop being jealous that her man's better than mine. I just put a big smile on my face and tried to be happy for her. I really did. Until the issue that I'm writing about just came up. Holly came to see our venue, and at the time she tooted and rolled her eyes the whole time, but as it was my wedding, I simply did not care. I'd asked her to be my bridesmaids out of a family duty, but I'm sure she would prefer not to be. The problem came to light 2 days later when I was sitting down for lunch with my mom, dad, and Holly. Holly kept nudging my mom and pulling faces, which to be fair was kinda normal, but she seemed desperate for something, and then my mom dropped the bombshell. Holly wanted the same venue as me. She not only wanted the same venue, but she wanted it before me. Mom had phoned and booked the earlier date, but there's no vacancies. The only free date was 7 months after ours, which would mean a winter wedding. I said that was a shame, but it was a popular venue, and a winter wedding could be nice. We live in an area where we get snow, so it would be pretty. My mom smiled and said that she was glad I could see that the winter wedding could be beautiful, as it was only fair that I move my wedding to that date, and allow Holly to marry first. Guys, I was absolutely stunned. I looked at them and then over at my father, who looked as shocked as I did. Holly was sitting with a smug look on her face, and I didn't know what to do, or even say. I mean, obviously, it's not going to happen. That was my date for my wedding, and I was not going to give it up. I maybe did not handle it well, if I'm being honest, and I stood up, told them to go to HE double hockey sticks, that I hated my family, and then stormed out. That was yesterday, and now I simply feel awful. As soon as I left, the phone started to ring, but I turned it off, so I didn't know how to deal with it and went to Jamie's house. I guess I'm looking for reassurance that I'm right to not give my sister my wedding date and the venue just because my mom said so. Why should I? I'm in such a mess. I need to think and sleep, and I'll let you know what I decide once my anger's cooled down. Update number 1. So yeah, last night I was mad as heck. I would not say I was much happier in the morning, though. I've finally spoken to my dad, and he has reassured me that I have no obligation to give Holly my date and venue. He said he had no idea what they were even going to ask me that, and he would have told them to stop if he would have known. After I left, Mom and Holly had some pretty awful things about me, which my dad would not tell me. But I have an idea of what they could possibly say. I said I'd be staying with Jamie for a while, as I didn't want to be in the house, especially with them there. Dad understood and said he would deal with things. As far as I'm concerned, I'll be putting them and their delusions to one side and concentrating on my wedding. Update number 2. I should have waited before I did the last update and said that things were going to be sorted. I guess that's what people call tempting fate. Jamie and I had a quiet few days, our lives is plodding on as normal. We went back to work, came home, looked at wedding things, and were pretty happy all in all. Until it wasn't good anymore, and was instead a big pile of stress, and appearance of past family issues was rising to the surface like a boiling geyser. I was at work with Jamie when my phone rang, and it was the venue. They said they were calling to confirm some details following the email correspondence. I was confused and said, "Wait, what?" Which was not the most elegant response I know. The reception out in the middle of nowhere was not great, and I was standing up to my waist in cold river water, so I managed to ask for things to be emailed to me as I couldn't hear very well. The hotel agreed, and I put it back to my mind, distracted by my work. In fact, I forgot about it until I checked my work emails, and I saw the email from the hotel. I opened it and read it 3 times, not entirely sure what I was even reading. Well, I called Jamie over to read it on my shoulder before I lost my mind. The email said this as followed. "We are pleased to confirm that we've looked at the details sent to us and will be accommodating the changes as requested. Please could you fill in the following paperwork confirming the names of the bride and groom who'll be joining up on you on your wedding date, and confirm that the new dates agreed between you for the new date for the original parties." I looked at Jamie, and even though I knew that the answer to the question said was, "You did not change anything, did you?" Obviously, Jamie had not sent an email, and I began to realize how long and low my mom and Holly were prepared to sink. Well, I called my dad and told him what happened. He was absolutely furious, and said he would deal with it and talk to me once he's spoken to Mother. As a precaution, I emailed the venue and said that I've not agreed to any changes, that the original date was still my wedding date, not my sister's. I spent the last hour pacing my room like a caged tiger, waiting for my father to contact me. I was ready to go home and fight it out with my mom and Holly, but Jamie was the voice of reason and said to let my dad deal with it. I'm angry, I'm a crying mess, and I'm sorry this is a lot for an update. Well, I'm just waiting for people to sort things out for me, but I'll update when I hear from my dad. What's up everybody, Mr. Edito here. I hope you guys are enjoying this story so far, and I hope you're having a great day. If you're new to the channel, my name's Mr. Edito, and I read stories every single day, narrating some of the most dramatic stories on the World Wide Web. Update number 3 is about to happen right now, and if you think things were crazy, you've seen nothing yet. Update number 3, here it is. This will be longer and more of a harsh update, so you might want to sit down and get a stiff drink. My dad called me after talking to my mom and sister, and they said that I've agreed to the changes, which was stupid, a very stupid argument to make, as I was obviously going to deny it. They told my dad that I've made the arrangement with Holly and Ben, and they would not change their story. I told my dad it's obviously a pile of lies, and to his credit, he agreed as he knew that there's no way I would have given them a date in the venue. My dad said he wanted to have a family meeting to get all the bad blood out and try to work out the reason why there's so much hostility between Holly and I. I initially said absolutely not. No way, not a chance. My dad sounded a little disappointed on the phone that I did give in and agree to sit down and chalk this out. I left this update until after the meeting, as I assumed that it would be the final update and everything would be settled. I did not expect the hate-filled tirade that was about to come my way and the actual things that my mom and sister had done and planned to do. I wish I could say that this is all going to have a happy ending, but there's no way that anything good can come from this. But I'm getting ahead of myself here, aren't I? Let's start in the beginning. If this takes too much mentality from me, I might do it in 2 parts. I'm drained and don't have anything left in me. Jamie and I arrived at my parents' home with my grandpa. He had picked us up and offered to drive us back there. I think he knew in advance that this was going to be rough. And honestly, we might need a drink. He's a really great man. So we arrived with my mom, Holly, and Ben just sitting at the table looking confident and smug. So my heart sank as I was hoping Ben would not be there. He made me feel uncomfortable, and at the time I didn't really know why. I do now, though. He's an awful human being, and I hate him with my entire being. But more of that soon. My dad was putting on a cheerful face and trying to keep the peace, but he was fighting a losing battle. As the two sides glared at each other with barely concealed contempt, my dad started the conversation, asking about why my mom had tried to change the dates of the wedding. My mom went on about how I'd agreed with what was just said, and I did not agree now to make trouble. I said she's lying. I would have never have agreed to that. I did not know even Holly and Ben had been settling a date yet, and Holly has been rude about the venue when I chose it, so why would she want it anyways? All she had to do was pick somewhere else, and she could get married whenever she wanted. I did not add that I would not be there, but there's no way I was going to her wedding to Ben. My mom called me selfish, and then the knives came out. She looked right at my dad and asked why he was supporting me over his real daughter. I stared at her, and before my dad could speak, I shouted, "I am his real daughter." Holly laughed and said, "No, you're not. You're not even blood family. You're just a hanger-on. When are you going to get that hint that we don't want you? No one does. Not your real mom either, and we don't either." Guys, I was speechless, and I just stared at them. I could not believe that my mom and sister hated me so much. What have I ever done to deserve it? My dad was quiet for a while and finally slowly said that he had 2 daughters. I was his oldest, and I would always be his daughter. My mom spat out that I would never be hers, and she didn't want me in the house after the meeting. By now, I was in tears, and I saw the sly smile on Ben's face at that point, and then shared looks between him and Holly. My mom had always favored Holly, but this was bad even for her, and I started to realize that her mind was being poisoned against me. Ben then joined the conversation and added gasoline to the already hot fire. And then he looked at Jamie with the look that I think was supposed to say, "Sorry to have to tell you this, buddy, but your wife-to-be is not loyal to you. She's been trying to get with me for ages." I stared at Ben and finally snapped, shouting at him he's delusional. There's no way on earth I would want to be anywhere near him. He makes my skin crawl. That's when Holly looked smugged and pushed Ben's phone across the table to Jamie. She looked as though she had the winning hand of an important poker game. As she said, "It's all there in the writing, Jamie. She's lying. She's a cheater." Sorry, I can't even type what she called me. I looked at the phone and laughed. Jamie picked it up and stared, reading the messages, and his face went from disbelief to anger. And for a minute I was worried he was falling for their tricks. He slowly slid the phone over to me, and I read through the filth that I had apparently sent to Ben. The low-life pond scum. I pointed out that it was not my phone number, but Holly said I was obviously not going to use my real number and must have had another phone that I used to cheat on Jamie with. My mom just sat there, looking like a cat that got the cream, and I was not sure if she was in on the plan to try to destroy my relationship or if she actually believed it to be true. My dad and grandpa stayed silent, and I found out later they were letting me fight for myself unless I looked like I was struggling. The truth is, they had total faith in me, which I'm forever grateful for. I looked over at Jamie and asked him what he thought, and before he had a chance to answer, Holly spoke. Well, seeing as OP's a cheater, I don't think you'll need that wedding date, will you, Jamie? So Ben and I are actually doing you a favor, as you won't be needing the stress of canceling everything. We'll just take all the same vendors as you've booked. You can even come to our wedding if you like, but not you, she added, looking right at me. I asked her if she really thought I would want to cheat on the man I've loved with her slime ball of a fiancé. Well, at this point, Holly gets upset, asking what's wrong with her man. I'd be lucky if he even looked at me as I was ugly, and he already had a beautiful girlfriend. She added I must get my looks from my junkie mother. As far as I know, my biological mother was not on any drugs in her life. Jamie finally spoke up, saying that he did not believe their lies for a minute, and that they were truly sad and pathetic for trying to go this far. They obviously had issues within their own lives if they wanted to try to ruin ours so desperately. I looked at my dad and said that I appreciate that he tried to help, but I was not prepared to sit and listen to their lies any longer. My mother finally spoke and said that when she had spoken to the venue, she'd ask about the catering, etc., and she was in contact with all the vendors. She made it very clear that she would not be allowing Dad to pay for any of my weddings as I wasn't his real daughter. That phrase was thrown around a lot that night. She also mentioned she had emailed them all to say that we would no longer be needing their services. I said she was lying because I would have heard from them. Holly laughed and said that Ben had set up new emails in my name, and they've emailed everyone saying my email had been hacked, so to use this one instead. She laughed and said it's a shame about your wedding dress being canceled too. Guys, that was the absolute final straw, and I hate to admit this, but I lost it. I lost my ever-loving temper, and I threw the water from my glass into Ben's ugly face. All this did was make him laugh, and Holly said I was showing my true colors. As I pushed my chair away from the table and asked my grandpa to take me home, my mom twisted the knife that was already stuck deep, metaphorically, between my ribs. She said that, as at the moment I was disowned and I would be out of the inheritance, as Holly was the only one who should be getting money, being the real daughter. I may or may not have told her where she could shove the money before I left as the anger took over, and Grandpa and Jamie ushered me out of the house in tears. Well, my dad came and whispered in my ear that I should leave it with him, and he'll be around to talk with me in the morning. I looked at him, still crying, and told him I love him, and my grandpa took me home. In the car, my grandpa told me everything's going to be okay. He loves me, and that they would see me tomorrow. I found out later he went back to the house to support my father, but I only found out the following day, so I was left destroyed and broken by the hate thrown at me, by the people that should be loving me. I can do nothing now but wait for my dad tomorrow to see if I've truly lost everything from my wedding to my family. Update number 4, final update. I was going to tag the conversation with my dad on the last update, but I fell asleep. And then this morning, I thought this needed its own conclusion. Life has really turned upside down for us all, and all the family and I thought that I've been split in my half. My dad and grandpa tore my mom, Holly, and Ben to strips of the treatment of me. Not just because of the wedding, but for my entire life treatment. I spent the morning emailing all the vendors to explain what happened, but one were able to still attend. The one that can't was very helpful and sorted out a friend of theirs who would also provide the services and would stand in. My dress is safe, so that was a relief. So I guess I'll just conclude this nightmare with the major changes that'll be happening from this point on. Firstly, my wedding will be happening on the date I booked, and my dad spoken to them to say that unless they hear from either Jamie and I or him in person, to double check all emails and correspondence before acting on it. He told them in detail that his wife and younger daughter had nothing to do with the wedding. He also told me that he's contacted his lawyer to make an appointment to look at the inheritance side of things. He said I was not to worry about that. I said I wasn't worried as money's not even my focus, Dad. His love was, and I just wanted to know he loved me as his daughter. He hugged me so tight I could barely breathe, and he cried as he said he loved me more than life itself. He told me how he was proud he was of me and that he would always be by my side. My grandpa said the same, and I felt so loved. Then came the bombshell. My dad told me he had not been happy in his marriage for a long time. My mom had pushed him time and time again to, quote, get rid of me, and he had tried to ignore it, but this was the final straw. As the house came a part of his job, he had told my mom to make arrangements to move out within a week. Ben has a house, so Holly can go there. He's also made it very clear that he disapproved of Ben, and that he was well aware of what he thought he was marrying into a family with money. Holly had yelled that Ben loved her, so my dad said that was good, because he would not be getting any money from us. Dad said when he said that, Ben's face dropped, and he did not think he would stick around once he realized Holly had nothing to offer him. The whole extended family is aware of what's happened, and they mostly support Dad and me. There's a few of my mom's side that seem to think she's right in her view that I'm not a real daughter to my dad, but their opinions don't really affect us. My mom and Holly tried to lay down the ultimatum that it was me or them, and Dad said that was their choice, and he would miss them, but he was not abandoning me. I tried to protest, but he laughed and said they would change their mind, don't worry. He just needed to let them cool their heads for a while. So it's a mixed conclusion, really. Not all good, not all bad. I don't know if I'll ever have a relationship with my mom and Holly again, but I'm happy. I'll always have Jamie, my dad, and Grandpa who love me. Life is like that, I guess. You win some, and you lose some. Alright guys, so I have mixed feelings about this one. I want to first shout out the grandfather and OP's stepfather for this, because if it was not for those two people, I think that OP would have been treated so much worse. But at the same time, I think the stepfather was an absolute doormat for most of the time. He didn't stand up for OP until the very end. I mean, yeah, he did certain little jabs here and jabs there, but I think he allowed way too much mistreatment from the mother, who was the one who wanted to adopt in the first place, and the stepsister, who was raised to be like that. Let me know your exact thoughts of this story, guys. If you don't agree with me, that's totally cool, but let's talk about it in the comment section. Go ahead and drop your thoughts down below. If you're new to the channel, my name's Mr. Reddito. I read stories here every single day. If that's something you're into, consider subscribing. I hope you guys have a good day, and I'll catch you in the next one.